When do we face the Commanders? Next week! Oh, God. Alright, folks, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the D-Bell Sports Podcast. I'm your host, David Bell, and today we're going to talk about the Washington Commanders and how they got good all of a sudden. It was the year 1932. Washington was awarded an NFL franchise under the ownership of businessman George Preston Marshall. They named themselves the Boston Braves. Okay, maybe we don't have to go that far back, but let's skip ahead. The Washington name we can't say anymore is were really good in the 80s and 90s. In 1982, the Redskins, dang it, whatever, they won the Super Bowl and even went back in the 1983 season. They won again in 1987 and then again in 1991. With that being the last year they won a conference championship. And all under the leadership of head coach Joe Gibbs. Now, Joe Gibbs was a legend. He had a reputation for championing black quarterbacks in the NFL, which was controversial at the time. In 1978, he encouraged Tampa Bay, when he was offensive coordinator, to draft quarterback Doug Williams from Grambling State University over national champion Matt Cavanaugh and Guy Benjamin, an All-American from Stanford. Doug Williams became the first black quarterback ever drafted in the first round of an NFL draft. After he retired, the team won the NFC East in 1999, 2012, 2015, and 2020. Between 1999 and today, they've won 2 playoff games, a wild card game in 2000, 1999 season, against the Lions, and one in 2006, the 05 season, against the Buccaneers. They win again in the 2007, 2012, 2015, and 2020 seasons, losing each time in the wild card round. My team sucks. Hate it here. I'll go over each of those seasons since those were the last times they went to the playoffs. So what happened in the 2007 season? Well, it would end up being Joe Gibbs' final season as head coach. They lured him back in 2004 after he retired from coaching after the 1992 season. They went 9-7 and lost to the Seahawks in the playoffs. They had 4 Pro Bowlers, including safety Sean Taylor, who was tragically shot in his home that November during an armed robbery and passed away the next day. He was a great player for the team, and his loss is still felt today. Rest in peace, Sean. Rest in peace. What happened in the 2012 season? Well, that was under head coach Mike Shanahan, and the offensive coordinator was his son Kyle Shanahan. It's also RG3's first year in the NFL after he was drafted number 2 overall, and his ability to run helped the team advance to the playoffs. The team went 10-6, losing to the Seahawks, those pesky Seahawks again, in the wildcard round 24-14. In the 2015 season, their head coach was Jay Gruden, and the offensive coordinator was Sean McVay, now head coach of the Rams. Their quarterback was Kirk Cousins, who was starting over RG3 because RG3 had sustained a concussion in the preseason. And Kirk Cousins ended up starting all 16 games and was even named the NFL's most improved player. They went 9-7 and lost in the wildcard round to the Green Bay Packers. Their only Pro Bowl player that year was offensive tackle Trent Williams. The 2020 season was quite something. COVID had struck the U.S. and the NFL did not allow fans in the stadiums. It was Ron Rivera's first season coaching the Commanders, who actually didn't have a formal name in the 2020 season after getting rid of their old one. He had Alex Smith as quarterback, along with Dwayne Haskins, Kyle Allen, and later Taylor Heineke. Now with Alex Smith, it would be his third and last year with the team before retiring altogether. He had spent 5 seasons with the Chiefs, but with the addition of Patrick Mahomes, they didn't need him anymore, and on to Washington he went. He suffered a gruesome injury in 2018 and didn't play the whole next season, coming back in Week 5 of the 2020 season. Dwayne Haskins started 6 games and Kyle Allen started 4 games with limited success. They also had Taylor Heineke, who was promoted off the practice squad in December. He had a stint with the St. Louis Battlehawks of the XFL, along with stints in other NFL teams. He ended up starting their playoff game against Tom Brady's Buccaneers, entering the playoffs despite a 7-9 record. And he played pretty well, losing 31-23. Now for reference, let me hit you with the highlights of the last few seasons. In 2021, Ron Rivera was still the head coach. He signed journeyman quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick to a one-year deal, who immediately got hurt in week 1 and was put on IR, making Taylor Heinicke the starter. They had a bad stretch, then a good stretch, then a bad stretch to end the season. They didn't go to the playoffs and went 7-10. In 2022, Ron Rivera was still the head coach. They were 8-1, and Carson Wentz and Taylor Heinicke were the starting quarterbacks. Sam Howell also started the last game, unfortunately, beating the Cowboys. But despite having 5 Pro Bowlers, they did not advance to the playoffs. Last year, they started Sam Howell and fired defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio mid-season. They went 4-13 and did not go to the playoffs. In the offseason, it was time for a change. They had the number 2 overall pick, and they needed a new coach to help them start over. So they hired Dan Quinn. Now, young offensive-minded coaches like Sean McVay were the sexy picks, and they probably wanted Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, but he bowed out to stay with the Lions, so they got Dan Quinn from the Cowboys. Now, Dan Quinn, of course, was the defensive coordinator for the Cowboys, and he's credited with turning around a struggling defense. In fact, under Mike Nolan in 2020, the Cowboys allowed a franchise-worst 473 points allowed. But for 3 years in a row, Dallas was in the top 10 in points allowed. He was also the former head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. But they didn't stop there. They used the number 2 pick to get the 2023 Heisman winning quarterback Jaden Daniels from LSU. They also raided the Cowboys for talent. Thank you very much. Luring away Joe Witt Jr., the passing game coordinator secondary coach, to be hired as the defensive coordinator. They also got players Tyler Biadasz, Dorrance Armstrong, Dante Fowler, Noah Brown, Noah Igbenanye. In the offseason, they also got players like running back Austin Eckler, linebacker Bobby Wagner, and safety Jeremy Chin. So why are they so good all of a sudden? They currently sit in second place in the NFC East with a 7-4 record after losing to the Eagles, who are 1 game ahead and sitting in first place. They haven't won 11 plus games since the 1991 season, and they're 4 games away from doing it, and I think they will. Jaden Daniels is developing very well under offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury, who just spent a year as an analyst with USC. Jaden Daniels also broke the rookie single-game completion percentage of 91.3% obtained in Week 3 against the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, the last time Washington had a Heisman-winning quarterback was never. They never had one. Jaden Daniels is their first one. The jury's still out, but the last few times they drafted a quarterback in the first round, it hasn't really worked out. Heath Shuler didn't really work out after he was drafted in 1994. Lost his job to Gus Frerotte, I don't know, in his 3rd season with the team. Patrick Ramsey in 2002 didn't work out. RG3 in 2012 eventually lost his starting job to Kirk Cousins. Now, head coach Dan Quinn, he's a different breed. He really changed the culture around for Washington. He set higher standards and focused on building relationships with and among the players, similar to what Dan Campbell is doing with the Lions. He even had the players learn more about each other before learning their playbooks. And he wants to prove that he's still a good coach. The 34-28 loss, after leading 28-3 in Super Bowl 51, still hangs over his head. He wants to go back to the Super Bowl and win this time. This is an opportunity to truly make the team his own, too. It can be rare that a head coach and a new quarterback join the team at the same time. Usually they just inherit an existing quarterback or sign a veteran. Or even have a rookie on the roster but don't start them. Consistency is important, and Jaden Daniels is truly Dan's guy. They really got their head coaching decision right with this one. Despite wanting Ben Johnson, Dan Quinn is a player's coach. Ron Rivera was on his way out, but Dan Quinn is really taking his second chance seriously. It was also the last time Jay Gruden was a head coach, though he would be an OC for 1 more year with the Jags. And it was the last time Mike Shanahan was head coach, when he left. It's also worth noting that the offensive line is much better than in previous seasons. In 2024, so far, it's ranked 8th in the league. In 2023, it was ranked 27th overall, and in 2022 it was ranked 24th. Now in 2021 and 2020, it was actually pretty good, being ranked 6th best both years. And a good offensive line makes all the difference. When Joe Gibbs won all those Super Bowls, he did it with a superb O-line. They even have their own nickname, the Hogs. So those are just a few reasons why the Washington Commanders this year are really bringing it all together, really clicking. They have a great head coach. They hit on their players in the draft. They acquired some great players, and they're just meshing very well. I predict the Commanders will win those 11 games, the first time since 1991, and go to the playoffs. They could even win a playoff game. Heck, I'm scared to face them when we play them next week. So I wish the Washington Commanders all the luck in the world this season. Obviously, I wish the Cowboys would have worked out a little better, but hey, that's life. That's okay. But the Washington Commanders have really got everything clicking, so you never know how far they can get. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching this podcast. Thank you to all my Patreon members, all my subscribers out there, all my watchers and listeners, and thank you so much. If there's anything else you would like me to talk about in the podcast, just let me know. And I'll see what I can do. But of course, go Cowboys!